This is Doug Adams, and I'm here with Howard Shore, and we're going to be talking about the music of The Lord of the Rings today. Should we talk about your procedure, how you compose these sketches and then have them turned into
Yes.
the early versions of themes and all that?
Yes. Previous to doing this film, I used to play back the score that I'd written on piano. Sometimes I'd use two pianos. Sometimes I'd use little ensembles to play the score before I recorded it. In this film, because everything was so detailed and we worked so closely together, Peter and I and Fran, that there were electronic sampled versions, essentially, done of my initial sketches. And the sketches were done in pencil in 4 to 6 staves.
Okay.
And then principally Greg Laporta, who was in New York, would do the mock-ups, and I would send him my sketches. I would scan them on my little scanner wherever I was in the world, even when I was traveling. I would do this. I'd be writing in a lot of different locations. I mean, in New Zealand, I would write and scan my pages to Greg in pencil, and then he would mock them up using samples. And when we started in the mines of Moria, and it took so long to establish the sound of the electronics because I'm writing for orchestra, and it took a while just to achieve the sound of Lord of the Rings, what it was going to sound like in this kind of mock-up version. And I think of the mock-ups as, you could think of them like storyboards to a film. Yeah, it's like a sketch. It's like a pencil sketch of the scene. So they really were just for demonstration purposes. It was a way to have a conversation with Peter about the music and how themes were used in the film and how scenes developed and how the pacing of the film felt. So it wasn't the sound of what we eventually achieved in the recording with the London Philharmonic, but it was a way to work and to have discussions and spotting and things like that.
Now, would you do the themes before you would get into setting them into a full composition?
Always did the themes, yeah. And Peter really liked the themes developed. With Rohan, I think I wrote maybe a 3-minute piece of the theme. So it wasn't just a few fragments or a few bars. He would say develop the whole piece. And it was actually such a smart way to work, because by doing that away from the film, essentially, you developed a lot of material that you could then expand upon. So Rohan and Two Towers, if you look through the demos of that period, you'll see a lot of the compositional ideas that were used through the whole film.
That's right.
In that piece. And it's good work, to do that, because you're not working directly with the film. You're writing in a pure music way.
Do you think the size of your catalog of themes is sort of a byproduct of Tolkien's creation?
Oh, of course, yes. The music, the score that I wrote is a mirror image of Tolkien's writing. I would read about Lothlorien, and then I wanted to create a piece of music that would bring Lothlorien in music terms to life. And I thought a lot about the use of the Tolkien languages used in the score to be very precise and to be very exact to the sounds of the men or the women. And Tolkien said that Dwarvish culture was mostly a male culture,
right?
And that even the women look like men. So, so the singing is all male.
Male voices, right?
And then I would use different sounds and registers and different harmonic language to define Rivendell, a more sophisticated, more worldly, learned culture of the Elvish world than Lothlorien. They wanted to create more mystique and mystery to Lothlorien, and so they used, partly in the composition and partly in the orchestration and the use of the voices to try to define these cultures. So actually, later on in the story, when you heard certain themes of Lothlorien, you knew that that was part of that world, and you heard certain sounds or arpeggios in a certain way for Rivendell, you knew that Elrond was part of Rivendell. You had to understand Galadriel's role and Elrond's role.
Was that the idea right off the bat? This has got to be a leitmotivic score. It's got to have that delineation.
Yeah, I don't know if we really even kind of really defined it so much. I think we didn't think in terms of leitmotif so much. I think it was more themes.
Okay.
This culture would have a theme, and I can't really tell you exactly why I used thematic ideas in certain. It was just an instinctual thing.
Just the feel of the piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Gandalf the Grey is not thematically defined early on,
Correct.
but he is as Gandalf the White, and I'm not. It just developed in a certain way, and the writing went on for a long time, many years, and I was reading the book all through that period,
Right.
and just instinctually I could feel this needs a definition, this doesn't. And I just kind of progressed along the way, and I would drop little stones along the way, of little things. And of course, working with Peter and Fran, and also particularly Philippa, who was a great Tolkien scholar, and they would guide me really well along the way. In the Council of Elrond, there's the moment where you hear a fragment of Gondor. It might have just been something Peter said to me.
Okay.
I think this moment is important with Boromir, and we need to establish his character, because you just met
Right.
or we didn't
coming at
know
the story,
who he was, and I think that requires a little detail. I mean, the writing to this story was so very much detailed, like incredibly detailed, with Peter, Fran, and Philippa. That moment by moment, gesture by gesture, I was writing and working my way through it, and working with themes and adding more themes to it and developing the themes. I mean, that was really the task. And so you're looking at all those years of work now, and also when I'm reading the book and going back through it, because it wasn't so planned out in a way. But when I see the great structure that it developed through it in the book, and I see it, it's because of Tolkien's great structure.
Right.
So what I did, as I say, was this mirror of what he had created. And in a way, by defining it in music, you were really somewhat defining it in a way, in a music form that he didn't create. It's almost like another image of it,
Right.
of his writing, in composition, in music. So that's a lovely thing.
It is.
And that's why
beautiful.
I'm so fascinated by it, and to go back and to do The Hobbit and to write music before this music, it's incredibly fascinating, because you're essentially dealing with such good ideas.
Right.
Tolkien's ideas, and you're dealing with his writing, which is so strong and so solid and so well developed. And at first, when I would read a few pages where he would describe nature, he'd describe an outcropping or a fern glen, in the woods, and you just relish those descriptions.
So in love
They've
with the
just
natural
become
world.
better and better.
Yeah.
And I think it tuned all of us up and made us better, I think, at what we did, because you were working on his level, and it kind of, I think, tuned everybody up in their own art
Right.
to produce something that was greater than what they could have achieved. I think he drove us on, and I think all of us all supported each other well, and that's why I think you achieved something good.
That's wonderful. Yeah.